All right, so welcome to another edition of the Dragon Ball Retrospective series where Herms and I look back at Dragon Ball the anime and Dragon Ball Z. This will be the end of Dragon Ball Z on this edition as we cover the final few episodes as well as the final few movies of the series. And we talk about that on here, in-depth analysis, just having a discussion about the series. If you are new and have not heard our previous editions, I will leave a link to the playlist down below so you can check them out. And I hope you enjoy them. Here we go. The end of the Boo arc with Herms. What'd you think about the whole thing with Fat Boo versus Boo? Because I remember I have a theory about why they were able to exist in the same, because a lot of people, I think it was actually Vegito EX, somebody from Kanzenshu when it was Daizenshu EX. This is years ago. I remember them pointing out how this really makes no sense. It may have been in the manga review of Awesomeness, but it's been years, about how there can't be a Fat Boo and a Kid Boo because there's only one Majin Buu with different absorptions. There may actually be a theory that I have, which I had to really write down and think about as to why it could make sense. But my question to you is, was it something that bothered you or something that you thought about when you saw the two Boos coexisting in the same realm?
I mean, yeah, it doesn't really make that much sense, but I can just accept it because I do like seeing them. It's interesting for them. It's more interesting for them to be two of them and for them to fight. So I kind of just go along with it. I do like.
Oh, go ahead.
And they come up with their fight's interesting because they both have the regeneration abilities and the rubbery powers. So you see them, Boo rip his arm off and make it a ball, and the Fat Boo, get his head blown off repeatedly and keep regenerating. So it's interesting to watch them fight.
Yeah, they're pounding each other. I love that part of the fight. And boy, can Vegeta take a beating. He took a pounding. I mean, what would you say is the I did a video about it, but I want to get your thoughts. What would you say is the biggest Vegeta beatdown ever? Is it Boo, is it Frieza, or is it 18? Because they're all pretty brutal.
Probably Frieza. At least in the anime where there's the whole episode of Frieza just punching him in the back.
That's right, eating the crab over his shoulder. For some reason that stuck with me. I don't know why when Frieza ate the crab. Yeah. Just weird. So then we have episode 287 and 288. The weird episodes. You got the Boo becoming a good guy, the mind wipe stuff. That's fine. That's just like art closing stuff. Then you've got the wacky Goku with the dodo eggs or whatever, the pterodactyl eggs. I thought it was the pterodactyl eggs was a good episode because they really did remind me of old Dragon Ball. And you gave it a pretty good rating, 3.75, but it is one of those episodes that even though I like it, I don't find myself rewatching it whenever I want to watch this part of it. I usually skip this episode, even though I like it. It's weird.
Yeah, this was another one where it had it had pretty bad animation, but everything else about it was pretty good.
Yeah, about the part where they're having that nightclub scene or whatever, where Chi-Chi's like dancing in like the weird color, like that part.
Yeah,
that was weird.
It's kind of a weird thing overall, but yeah, is this the first time we have just everyone getting together to eat?
I mean, it happens in Super every arc, it seems, right?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's this is where it started, I think.
I think so. I mean, but it's implied that maybe they did it during the 7-year time skip, but Goku's dead, so he's not there.
I mean, this is the first time we see it.
Yeah.
Oh, and this is also the episode where it has the giant snake, which is in the first episode of Super.
That's right. That's right.
So
I love that.
So this must be where they got the idea for Super from. They just rewatched, what was happening during that 10-year time skip? Oh, let's watch this episode and then base all of Super off this.
Yeah, they definitely did their homework on that one. Now, before we get to the end of Z stuff here, episodes 289 to 291, the EOZ era, I wanted to ask you about some of the movies that came out during this time, namely movie 12 and 13, Fusion Reborn, otherwise known as Revival of Fusion, Goku and Vegeta, and movie 13, which has the longest name in history, Dragon Fist Explosion. If Goku can't do it, who can or who will?
If I can't do, no wait, yeah, it is Goku.
Yeah, if Goku can't do it, who can or who will? It's the same thing, from what I understand. So okay, because Goku says that at the end of the movie. I wanted to kind of get your thoughts. I mean, I actually think these movies are pretty damn good, man. You gave the Fusion Reborn movie 5 out of 5, and you said changes the history of fighting. What do you mean by that? Like that's
well, that was, I mean, it's a reference to the ending song.
Oh, that's right. Doragon Boru.
Midas Fusion.
Are you a karaoke guy? Have you ever tried singing karaoke?
No, not really.
That's too bad because I would love to hear you sing in Japanese. It's probably awesome. So now you
So
like
yeah,
this?
that was. I mean,
Excuse me.
that was kind of a joke just to reference the end of the song. But yeah, I do think this is one of my favorite movies. I mean, maybe it's not the deepest plot, but it's like there's nothing. In my opinion, there's nothing you could really. There's nothing to change about this movie. Like it's just it does what it does as well as it as could be done. And there's not a wasted moment throughout the whole movie, and it looks great, and it's got like every 3 seconds there's something new and completely insane happening, but it's all there's still like an under it's not just random crap, it's all there's an underlining logic with the underworld is thrown out of whack, therefore the dead come back to life, and therefore they've got to go to hell and fix things, and it's actually it's
Taikuhan gets
surprisingly,
some shine too.
yeah, it's surprisingly coherent despite the fact that it seems like at first glance just be a bunch of like a every weird idea they had just in one movie. There's Hitler, or rather Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator,
The Great
apparently,
Dictator, yeah. And you have Mr.
and
Satan, and you have What about like they have like Romeo and Juliet? Man, they have wacky stuff in this movie.
yeah, just every reference they
Frieza,
could think of. Yeah,
Frieza, because we know Frieza coming back. That's never happened before. You've got that, and yeah, and now I wanted to ask you about also movie 12, Janemba. Now the story about Janemba, right, was that it was a Yamamuro design, and then Toriyama gave it the thumbs up. I think that's the same
yeah,
thing for
and he kind
Janemba
of.
and Gogeta.
Let's see. I think just for Janenba, from what I hear. But yeah, Yamamura came up with the initial design, and then Toriyama tweaked it a little bit. I think specifically with the veins that he has in his slimmed down form.
Yeah.
And this is something Yamamura has said in an interview. I think in the Golden Warrior art book. Toriyama himself hasn't, I don't believe, commented on work doing this design. So we just have Yamamura's side of it. And unlike some of the other movie characters Toriyama did do designs for, we don't have any of his designs for this movie. So if he did do a drawing of Janemba, I guess it's been lost. Or I mean, that's what kind of implies that his influence wasn't as great as some of the other movies where he straight out did the villains, like Brawley or Bojack. And then with Gogeta, I don't think he actually did any of he wasn't involved in the design, but he did later, years after the fact, do a sketch of Gogeta for the Dragon Box the Movies box set.
Yeah, I remember that, but I remember also the Devil's Corpse, otherwise known as Dragon Ball Redux, on the Kanzenshu board. He said that Toriyama did not design Gogeta, which actually was new information because I thought that he did design Gogeta.
No.
Go ahead. What were you gonna
Yeah,
say?
I don't think there's been. Yeah, there's never been anything saying Toriyama did Gogeta. In what we did have was in his Daisenshu 6 interview where he was saying that the reason why Vegito appears in the series, in the manga, was because Toriyama was like, Toriyama was wanting Goku and Vegeta to fuse, but because movie 12 was already in the pipeline and had them fuse via the fusion dance, he's like, well, I guess I better come up with another way of combining them. And so that's why he came up. Then that's when he's like, I could use these earrings. Or just say these earrings will allow them to fuse. And that's how we came up with the Potara and Vegito.
Yeah, the
But yeah,
alternate method of fusing.
Yeah, but with Gogeta himself, as far as I know, Toriyama wasn't involved in the design process.
Now, with movie 13 and with the Path to Power, Path to Ultimate Strength, this is actually new information for me. But a couple of years ago, we discovered that Studio Ghibli helped out with this. Do we know what the extent of that help was?
Nah, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think we know the extent. I don't have any details on that.
Yeah, I don't know. I know they help, but I don't know how much. So, movie 13, would you say this is the most? You put a lot of characterization stuff here. Would you say it's the most cinematic of the original 13? I always felt that it was, like actually telling a story.
Yeah, it feels most like an actual movie, as opposed to just like
a longer episode.
Or I guess a very compressed story arc, or just like most of the movies with the series just feel like just a redo of actual story arcs. Most of the villains are fairly clearly copies of villains from the main series, and even Hildegarn is a Genmajin, obviously a takeoff of Majin. but he doesn't the concept of a fantasy villain is borrowed from Majin Buu, but design wise he doesn't look anything like Buu, whereas Janemba, of course, obviously based off Fat and Super Buu.
Fat and Super, yeah. Now with Hirudegarn or Hildegarn, I was going to ask you, is that Yamamura? Because I don't have a lot of homework. I don't have a lot of notes on Hirudegarn's origin.
Let's see. I
Was
can't
it
remember.
Toriyama?
I can't remember specific. No, it wasn't Toriyama, but it was either Yamamura or one of the other anime design, maybe Nakasuru.
Yeah.
But yeah, the story behind it that I remember, and this is again from Daizenshu 6, the movie's Daizenshu, where they're saying like there was some original version of the character, I think, and then they're like, oh, that's not. It was the exec. I don't know, some staff member named Haruda, who was like, oh, this isn't scary
funny.
enough. Come up with a scarier design, and so they came back with a design which, quote, made his jaw drop, so his jaw hit the floor, making a gon sound effect. So Hiruta Gon, and so they kind of changed it around. That's where you get Hiruta Garn.
That's classic. I never knew that story. I never knew that until you just told me.
Uh,
There's so
it's
many.
yeah,
There's so much information in those damn books, bro.
and yeah, so that's got to be maybe the record for one of the most obscure name puns of all time. Because if we hadn't gotten that story from the staff, there's no way we ever would have been able to work out where that name came from.
What about Janemba? What's this name?
Oh, Janemba is so from Ja's evil, Nen is thought, and it's the same Nen as in Hunter x Hunter, their equivalent of ki. So Ja Nen, and Ba from Ha, wave. So it's a wave of evil thought, more or less.
That's pretty cool,
which
actually.
kind of it kind of fits his origin, where the that tank guy is enveloped by the explosion from the spirit laundering machine. So it's like a wave of evil hits him and it becomes Janemba. And I guess speaking of Hunter x Hunter and Togashi, in Yu Yu Hakusho, there is a Kurama at one point. He defeats Elder Toguro with a plant called in Japanese the Janenju, which is again evil thought tree. So instead of the Janen is the same, but instead of Ha or the Ba meaning wave, it's Ju meaning tree. So it's like the same. It's the tree version of Janemba, if that makes sense.
The tree Janemba. Now, Path to Ultimate Strength, before we do the final 3 episodes here, Path to Power, whatever. Beautiful animation. I mean, it's some of the best animation ever, like, in the entire series. Like, it's gorgeous. It's just one of those things where I find myself not frequenting this movie. Now, the thing about this movie, Herms, man, is that I've talked to a lot of Dragon Ball fans, and a lot of them adore this movie. Like, this is like Disney level shit here. Like, people love this movie, and I've just kind of been like, I don't know, like, in some ways, as weird as this may sound, I sort of prefer, like, The Legend of Shenlong a little more. Like, what is it? I don't know. Maybe it's like another retelling. Maybe is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, so the flip side, while I don't want to give episodes with bad animation low scores automatically, on the flip side, I also don't want to rate things too highly just for good animation. So yeah, like with this thing, has easily some of the best animation we've ever seen with the franchise. But yeah, there's something about this story that's just lacking. I guess, yeah, kind of inevitably, because it's not only a retelling of the Red Ribbon and initial hunt for the Dragon Ball arc, it's like the second time we've kind of got that in a movie. And it's like, I think actually my problem, and I mean, I liked this movie. I gave it a solid score. I can't remember exactly what.
5.
Yeah, so that's that's very decent. So yeah, right in the good but not great category. And so I guess my biggest feeling on the movie is just disappointment, because it feels like it should have easily been great, but it just, to me at least, I want to like this movie more than I do, but every time I watch it, it just doesn't, it falls short.
It's too long, you think?
Maybe, or it's like it's paced strange. Like the parts of it are paced too quickly, and then other parts are dragged out too long. And then so what I think maybe one of my biggest things is that, so the movie ends with Goku wishing for number 8 to be brought back, and then that's it. Like the movie just stops and we get the credits, and we don't see the wish made, which I guess I feel like if the whole movie is them trying to gather the Dragon Balls to make a wish, we should actually see the wish enacted.
Yeah, and in Mystical Adventure, you see it during the credits at least, right?
yeah, it's like they should show it during the credits, or yeah, like we should see it if that's what the movie is leading towards, is the Dragon Balls being used to do something. And I mean, maybe they're like, well, the by this point we've seen people brought back to life with the Dragon Balls a million times. We don't need to show it again. But I feel like the point of a movie like this should be something that's self-contained, so that
Yes.
like someone theoretically, someone who hasn't ever seen the series before in any form could just sit down and watch this and enjoy it as a self-contained movie. And it comes close to that, but ultimately, like, it doesn't really. It fails in too many ways. Like, it's. I feel like ultimately it's not going to make as much. Like, they rush through too many things because they kind of just assume, we've seen this before. We can just kind of cruise through it.
It's such a
And
polarizing movie too, because I'm telling you, Herms, man, people love this freaking movie. I almost feel like for a lot of fans, this might have been their first exposure to like Kid Goku. I think a lot of North American fans maybe like, I don't know this to be a fact, but maybe they watched DBZ, then they went to the video store and saw this movie and were like, let me check this out, and that was like their first like exposure to Kid Goku, maybe.
maybe. And I mean, I guess it probably does depend on at what point in your fandom you watch it. Because, like, yeah, if it is the first movie you see, then probably would be, it'd make an impression. Whereas if you see this before the Red Ribbon arc or Legend of Shenlong or those early Dragon Ball movies, if you see this first, then it would probably make the biggest impression. Whereas if you see the other stuff first, then by the time you get to this, it just feels like the same old, same old.
Yeah, and then of course you've got the fans who don't care because Goku can't transform, and Goku's power up at the end. For a second there, you think maybe he's gonna do it, and you're like, wait a minute, they're gonna screw us all up. But he wound up not doing it. Now let's talk about
Might
the.
as well. I mean, they basically make number 8 into number 16 and Goku into Gohan.
Yeah, and not to mention that the designs of the Red Ribbon Army is different, but that is from Toriyama. I know there's confusion there. Toriyama did do the redesigns for like Staff Officer Black and those guys. He did do that for this movie. That was from him.
Yeah, and the new battle jacket robot at the end.
Yeah, that's Toriyama. That's not just Toei doing their own thing. He helped. So again, this movie's kind of an anomaly. Like I feel like it stands on its own. It's so separate from everything else. It literally is probably the most self-contained story in all of Dragon Ball. Like I would say it's even more self-contained than Evolution, which you did not cover. I
Yeah.
don't think. Did you cover
No,
Evolution?
I haven't seen it.
No. You know what? I'm gonna tell you something that might get me in trouble. It's really not that bad, but it's a horrible movie. But it's not. If you go into it knowing it's terrible, it's not that bad. You're like, oh, okay, that was it. It sucked, but it wasn't like I want to kill. Like, especially the fact that it did not harm the Dragon Ball franchise. Like, it wasn't like Fantastic Four or like some of these other movies that kill like franchises in the popularities in the population's eyes for years. This didn't do that. Dragon Ball still right now red hot as we speak. Super was not hurt. Neither was Battle of Gods by Evolution. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, it's like whatever. It's a stupid movie. That's the way I always saw it. I mean, I put it right up there with The Magic Begins, which you also didn't do.
Yeah. Oh, I should say. Okay, so I have seen part of Evolution, and it was. Let's see. I'm trying to remember because it came out when I was in Japan, and I believe the timing. Like one of the reasons I didn't see it is it debuted in America when I was in Japan, and then I left Japan when it was before it came to Japan. So like I came back to America and it was out of theaters in America. So it's like I was never in the right country at the right time. But when I was on the plane, I guess going back to America from Japan, it's one of these 16-hour flights or whatever.
Right.
And they get the movies you can watch. And so I had this on in front of me and I fell asleep. And I wake up at one point and it's playing the first Star Trek, the first J.J. Abrams Star Trek movie.
Yeah.
And I watched that